Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar. We are so glad that all of you are here. I am Karen Lacer with Nifty Method, and we're excited to have you join us today for today's webinar, Hotel Contracts in the COVID Era. We're excited to have Tom Pasha, President of Contact Planning, with us today. Tom has been recognized as one of the top convention planners in the industry, starting in hotel positions of caddy, bellman, bartender, and cook. Tom began his management career as a Hyatt management trainee in Chicago. He went to sales management positions throughout the Hyatt organization, working in 12 Hyatt hotels over 20 years. Tom was director of sales at Hyatt hotels in Greenville, San Antonio, and Chicago O'Hare, and as director of sales, started the national sales office for Hyatt hotels in Omaha. Tom won Sales Manager of the Year, Sales Director of the Year, Sales Team of the Year, and the Donald M. Pritzker Award for Sales Excellence. Went into meeting planning and founded Contact Planning Incorporated, a national meeting planning company with headquarters in Orlando. The company concentrates on corporate and association events, many with a golf element. Contact Planning Inc. books over 100,000 room nights and 30,000 rounds of golf at clubs and resorts nationwide, working with premier, corporate, and association clients. So we are very excited to have him today. Just a couple of housekeeping notes for you. Today's webinar is being recorded, and an email with that link, provided technology cooperates with us this week, will be sent out within 48 hours after the webinar. To ensure a quality recording, we have muted all lines. But just because you are muted does not mean that we do not want to hear from you. Please use the chat window and send us any messages, and also the Q&A window to send questions as they pop up. Feel free to put those in as you have them, and we will have time for those at the end. Tom will definitely have time for Q&A at the end, so make sure that you include those, and we will get to as many as possible. With that, I would like to turn it over to Tom, and we'll pass the presentation on over to him. Tom, you're up.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. Can everyone see me? Can you? Just want to check to see, am I visible here? Hello? Hello? Am I up?
Yes, you're up. Sorry, I didn't mute.
Very good. And for some reason, I tell you what, I want to, first of all, welcome everyone. So you can see me, correct? Yes?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
I love technology. Anyway,
everybody's saying in the chat room that they can see you, so we are.
Okay. Excellent. First of all, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming. It's good to have everybody here. We've got a lot of people here on today's program. We're going to talk about hotel contracts now and in the COVID era. And the reason I say it now and in the COVID, because there's a lot of stuff you have to know about, just generally about hotel contracts. And then as we get into the COVID era, and hopefully we're getting out of it at some point in the near future, there's going to be a lot of contract issues that are coming up. So we're going to be talking about that. A couple items, I'm not a professional speaker. I am a professional hotel guy, and I am a professional meeting planner. So if I stutter or stammer every now and then, that's part of the deal. And hopefully we'll cover a lot of great content. I've seen a lot of these programs where you get 2 or 3 items per slide, and you really don't get a whole lot of content. Here, you'll get a ton. So I highly recommend take a lot of notes now. Do get the PowerPoint later and read through it, because there's going to be, in some of these slides, there's going to be to-do lists of things on how I do an RFP, or how I negotiate, or clauses I look for, things that I look for and do every day that you probably also do. But this will help you check to see what you're currently doing, and it's not what you do, is how well do you do it. Can you do a little bit more, a little bit better to make and impart value to your job and as a planner, and to make your group function on a higher level. Anyway, so with all that in mind, just want to get started here. There's a ton of stuff here, so do take notes. We will have questions at the end, and hopefully have enough stuff to fill at least an hour, probably more. Anyway, but as far as introductions, like I said, I've been in hotels since I was 15. I'm actually from here in Orlando. I'm a BD before Disney. So before Mickey, Minnie, Donald, everybody arrived here, I worked here in the hotels. And I did the operations for the first few years, and I went on to Hyatt hotels. I worked at 12 Hyatts over 20 years. I was a 6-time director of sales. I was national sales director in Omaha, Nebraska. I started the group desk. If you've ever called the group desk for Hyatt, Hilton, Sheraton, Marriott, I started the one for Hyatt hotels. And then about a little over 20 years ago, I started contact planning. This is my company. We've got a half dozen offices around the country. We do high-end, we like to call concierge meeting planning, where we do a lot of custom work for people. We don't just move room nights, just plotting and placing rooms all over the world. We try to actually do a lot of service in addition to that. But the other thing is I teach meeting planners how to plan meetings from the hotel side. Because a lot of people belong to MPI. If you go to an MPI session, for example, it's meeting planners teaching meeting planners how to plan a meeting. What I like to do is teach you how the hotels work. And if you can kind of put yourself into the hotel status now, you can see how we think, how we're trained, so you can become better negotiators and better contractors. So that's kind of the idea. I want you to kind of peek behind the curtain and see how we hotel guys look at things. And when we show you this, you can be a better planner on your own. Basically, we are profit-driven monsters. Hotel people, we are driven from the first day on our first day on the job, whether you're a busboy, a waiter, a bartender, a cook, whatever you might be, everything is profit. When I was a busboy, if you dropped a rack of glasses, you were yelled at, because we were taking money out of the profit sharing. If you broke glasses, that's what you want. You want to be able to increase your sales and minimize your expenses to maximize the bottom line. Because everybody wants to keep a job, everyone wants to stay in the hotel business, but we are profit-driven people. Basically, it's all driven based on gaps. As I said, generally accepted accounting principles. Every major hotel corporation has basically a book of gaps. It's what they call gaps. And this is the accounting procedures, where if it's a Hyatt, Hilton, Sheraton, Marriott, whoever it is, it's basically the same P&L, the same profit and loss. And all the hotels have the same assignment of expenses, they have the same assignment of income, and they will basically come in with the same amount of profit. This is probably the most important slide of a hotel guy, that we know that in the rooms department, we keep 80 cents of every dollar we touch. We keep 80 cents, 80% profit. So if I have a $200 rate, I get to put $160 in my pocket. That's a lot of money for one room for one night. Catered F&B, I get 40%. I get 40 cents of every dollar I touch. So if I have a $50 plus chicken lunch, which is very common, I get to put about $22 in my pocket just from that one lunch. So I'm going to make a lot of money. Continue. Anyway, so like I said, rooms, we get 80%. Food and beverage, I get 40%. Total F&B, I don't really make a bunch because I lose money in the restaurants. You would think I'd make a lot of money with a $5 cup of coffee and a $20 sandwich, but I've got this multi-million-dollar chef in the back and all of his friends in my kitchen, so I have a very high expense level in food and beverage, so I don't get to keep nearly what I want. In gaming and recreation, I have a lot of tipped employees. Mostly, I get 90% profit though. Every dollar I get, what's called the handle, if $1,000 get dropped at a $1,000 hand blackjack table, I get to put $900 in my pocket. Recreation, basically we're dealing with spa and we're dealing with golf and that sort of thing. That's 90% profit also. So what we try to do as hotel people is maximize rooms, maximize in hotels with gaming and recreation, maximize that. And then what we try to do is get the most sales as we can, and then we watch our expenses to maximize our profit. I'm getting some people raising their hands. You getting?
We will do questions at the end. So if anybody that's raising their hand, yeah, we'll take care of that, and they can just put their questions in the Q&A. We will take care of it there.
Okay, very good. Just want to make sure.
Okay,
anyway, so we talked about sales on the one side and our profit margin. The other thing is we look at, as hotel people, we want to maximize our day-by-day sales. And what we look at it is that if we have 1,000 room hotel and we only fill 990 rooms one particular night, we'll never get the revenue back from those 10 rooms for that one night. We'll never see that again. We look at it the same way in hotels as the airlines do. Once that plane takes off, they have 5 empty seats. They'll never see that revenue again. So what we try to do is maximize our day-by-day sales. So the meeting planners on this call, think about this. So it's what you want to do is have a very good RFP, a very accurate RFP that kind of matches how we hotel guys think. A couple of things here. We have about 100 square feet of meeting space per group room. So if I have a 500 room hotel and I can anticipate 400 rooms of group occupancy, that means for 400 rooms, I need about 40,000 square feet of meeting space, hard wall meeting space for the meetings, meals, and breakouts. With COVID coming up, it's actually almost double that. At least, well, not quite double. Now they're saying about 170, 180 square feet per group room. So now with COVID, you actually have to work your numbers to find out how much meeting space you're using, how many guest rooms you're using, and if you can come in ideally at about 100, let's say 150 to 170 square feet per room, now you're a good piece of business. If you go past that, we consider you space heavy and you may not fit in our hotel. So that's real important, right? Because we're not going to assign meeting space, a small block of rooms for a huge amount of meeting space, because I could be losing other business. So that's very important. Like I said, rooms profit, I got 80%. So I want to make sure that those guest rooms that I'm putting on the books, I know they have solid history, they've picked up before, I'm not the first hotel they've ever worked with. I want to make sure if I say that it's going to be a $100,000 piece of business, it's going to be a $100,000 piece of business. Because if it's 100 grand in sales, that's 80,000 in profit. And we hotel guys, that's how we look at these things. 40% catered F&B. I like catered breakfast, lunches, dinners. So they said, I don't make any money in the outlet. Having you group turn loose for a lunch on own doesn't do me any good, because I'm just going to lose a lot of money on that. But if I can do some catering, I can make some good money. The next bullet point here is basically I look to about $125 per person plus per room per day in catering. If I'm getting about 125 plus, it's about 160 or so out the door, that's a good piece of business. Because what I want to do is that what happens is it used to be with hotel sales, you would talk to your sales manager, he or she would check the dates, they'd give you a rate, they'd give you a price and some concessions, and pretty well you made it up, you pretty much did it just between the two of you. Now it's pretty much the client with the sales manager, but the sales manager has to talk to the director of sales or the director of revenue management. Those two people will determine, it's every morning I have a business review meeting and they do a walk, everybody stands up and they go around the room and say, what do you have today? What do you have today? And they determine if there's two or more hotel managers going for the same set of dates, guess what? The one with the best meeting profile gets the space. And we're very specific about that. And now with COVID, it's not as firm as it has been because of a lot of cancellations, but it is starting to build again for 21 and 22. Actually, what's happening for 2020, a lot of it moved into 21 and 22, and there is a lot of movement now for new business going into those 2 years. So as soon as we get some sort of vaccine, get sort of things going again, it's going to get really busy really quick. That's one thing to look at as far as the revenue. Also, when you're looking at a piece of business from a hotel standpoint, we look at it as, are you going to add a point to my occupancy? So if I'm a 79% occupancy, and if I book this, it's now an 80% occupancy, from a hotel standpoint, I'm a rock star. So this would be if I have, in this case, 300 rooms times 365 days in the year, that means I need 109,500 room nights to run 100%. So if I have 1,000 room nights, right at 1,000 room nights, I've just put up 1 point on the annual. So instead of being 79, I'm now at 80% occupancy. So 80, I'm at 81%. So as much as I can chip away on that percentage of occupancy, again, from a hotel standpoint, that makes me valuable to my boss. So I make sure about that. And even if it's a short-term group, like a 90 room nights, I put a point on my monthly. My monthly forecasts have gone from 80 to 81%, for example. So that also is very helpful. So when you're evaluating your business, you want to think like a hotel guy does, because if you can think the way we do, then you'll be able to kind of shrink your space, maximize your rooms, maximize your catering, and you want to be flexible with your dates so that you want hotels competing for your business. You don't want to be begging them to take your group. Anyway, so basically the way it works is occupied rooms times the ADR, average daily rate, is revenue. So the revenue is the only thing that counts at 80% profit. So it works very well that way. And it's pretty much your first or second day as a hotel sales manager, you'll learn these numbers. You'll learn how important it is to maximize each group that you're working with. But a great contract, we talk about negotiating, make sure you're having a good booking, but you'll see contracts. And contracts is a whole idea that contracts come in now, and there's two things. You want special concessions to request in your RFP that you'll lead to a contract, and it's also traps to avoid. What's going on, which is interesting, a lot of hotels, with the void that's going on, the business is slow and there's not a lot coming in, a lot of them, interestingly, have changed their contracts. There's a lot of stuff, and I call them traps. I'm sure there's some legal other phrase to be used, but this one I call them a trap because I think they're trying to entrap the planner by seeing if they can kind of sneak something by us by putting it in the contract that wasn't there formerly. So we'll go through these. A few of these are very important. This is the standard concessions. I would have this in my normal RFP. The people on this call, you have an RFP. Typically, you'll say, here's a day-by-day block. Here's my history. Here's my day-by-day concessions. Or here's my concessions. This is what I'd like. So with all this in mind, some of this stuff you probably already have on your RFP. Some of this you want to check to make sure you maybe can improve it or make it a stronger bid all the way around. I do a 1 per 40 comp credit calculated on a cumulative basis. That's a trap because right now a lot of hotels, or not a lot, but it's coming up where hotels are doing 1 per 40 comp on a day-by-day basis. So they may not have it on the days where you've got just your staff or speakers checking in before the main arrival. So you want to make sure it's on a cumulative basis. 3 VIP suites at the group rate with the arrival date and departure date. That's very important. 2 things on that. Make sure you put arrival and departure date. Don't say staying through the 10th. We hotel guys don't know what that means. Go arrival date and departure date so you know exactly when is your VIP checking in and when exactly is he or she checking out. The trap here is that a lot of hotels are putting their VIP suites over the peak dates of the booking and not the shoulders on either side. So the trap here, thing to look out for, is make sure you're getting the entire arrival and departure date for the entire group. Most of the time your VIP upgrades want to come in early and leave late because they've got small sessions in study groups or meet with the officers or whatever before or after the main group. So make sure that you've got that. Again, the VIP suite, just make sure it's there showing arrival and departure date. The room rate, it's interesting here, single, double, triple, quad. I ask for a flat rate every single time. Because if somebody is going to bring their son or daughter up for shopping after the 3rd day, or they're going to do whatever it is, I want to make sure that I'm not getting a 129 single double, but then 149, 169 triple and quad. I want a flat rate all the way through. Sometimes what happens is, and you look at this, they'll negotiate the single double rate, but then in the block that's on your contract, they'll add $20 or $30 for the triple and quad. It's not a lot of money, but it does add up. And you do end up, again, your guests will see the 120 single double. They won't see that triple quad rate until they actually tell the hotel they've got someone joining them on the 2nd or 3rd day. That's real important. Complimentary wireless internet, that's pretty much easy now. That's coming along. Basic bandwidth wireless in all of meeting rooms, that's pretty good. Freight delivery, I'm a big believer. You could pretty much, when you read these massive contracts, and way in the back is the freight delivery thing, and it's a little paragraph, and it's just amazing. We are putting these freight guys through medical school. You can negotiate all that stuff. If I always negotiate minimum, the first 500 pounds are free. I want that in. It's first 500 pounds are free. After that, I want to negotiate based on the weight of the box and not the number of boxes, because they'll take every box that you send them and they'll count it at 50, $5 to $10 to $20 per box. Could be a little box or could be very big. Always ask about that, load in and load out times and staffing. I want to make sure if I'm loading in and loading out, I can get to the dock. And that the trap here is just to make sure that you get the, that's coordinated. And then you're also getting the first, say in my case, I asked for 500 pounds free. Hotel to allow outside contractors or AV floral decorators at no surcharge. A lot of times they'll say that you're free to bring it in, but there's a house charge of some sort. Just avoid that. That's not good. If you're bringing in an outside AV or outside AV equipment or a florist or whatever, you should make sure that you're getting that in with no fee of any sort. Complimentary meeting space or cumulative catering minimum of whatever the number might be. Okay, and again, that's the trap. It's sometimes, I've actually seen this where the hotels are saying it's a day-by-day F&B minimum. Make sure it's cumulative all the way through. Complimentary healthcare, fitness, you see that. Complimentary attendee parking, that's fine, I ask for that. 5 complimentary validated parking passes, ask for that. Refreshments in staff office, that's a real good one, and that's actually getting very popular. I asked the hotel to cater sodas, coffees, water, snacks in the course of the day in the staff office. And most hotels for the right size group don't have a problem with that. It's just kind of a nice courtesy. The hotel to host a site and planning visit up to 2 days for up to 2 rooms. A lot of times they'll do that just kind of automatically, but my problem is a lot of times you'll sign the contract, someone else will get when it's booked, it'll actually, the convention service manager will inherit the file. The sales manager will get transferred to another hotel. So you've got to explain that there was a site inspection arranged. But a lot of times I just like to have it in the contract. A winning hotel to reimburse group for air ticket. This one I like a lot. Okay, what I'll do is if I have 3 and 4 hotels competing, I'll say that the winning hotel, these 3 and 4, whoever gets the contract will reimburse the client for his or her air ticket. And as a hotel guy, I don't want to split the air ticket with 3 other hotels. If I get the group or if I lose the group. If I do get the group though, I'm fine paying for the entire air ticket because I've got the signed contract. Audio visual and catered F&B, those are both can be traps. You want to make sure it's a bit discount off what? Is that 20% off the current menu or off the menu for that particular year? Just make sure you're seeing that because you want to make sure it shows. If it's the current menu, then what you want to do is have a copy of the current menu in the file. So you know exactly what you're going to be paying for and it's not, again, a trap. The hotel to host a 1-hour welcome reception, beer, wine, highlight, hot and cold hors d'oeuvres. I love doing that. As a hotel sales guy, I would comp dozens, if not hundreds of receptions just to get groups to come in on a Sunday or Monday night. Those are my 2 slowest days of the week. So if I can get 2 of them covered or any of those covered by comping a reception of some sort, I'll do that all day long. So do be sure to ask for that. I'm sure a lot of people on the call do, but I always make sure and don't say just light hors d'oeuvres. You want to kind of specify, actually I'd like specifying a little more specific than this, but I have limited space. The guest room is accepted after cutoff date at the group rate based on space availability. The group rate, a lot of times the trap is they'll say it's prevailing rate. So it's rack rate. You don't want to be whatever the rack rate is because that could be double or more what your group rate is. So you want to make sure if that person is in that hotel for attending your function, he or she should get that group rate. The hotel agrees to a group audit. So what they do is called an audit clause. Hilton has a grip clause, HIDA, something similar. Basically, they take their registration list and compare it to your attendee list. And they'll just make sure that anyone who's attending your program does have a room. I don't care how they make it. I don't care if it's a comp. I don't care if they're using Marriott points. I don't care if they belong to AAA, whatever the deal might be. If that body is in that hotel because of your meeting, you should still get credit for it. So I make sure that everybody who is there attending my meeting is there giving credit towards pickup. And then group rate extended 3 days pre and post. That's also very good. I just like to make sure that sometimes they'll say, well, the group rate's not available or there's no rooms available. And I'll actually call the hotel or I'll go online to see, have they closed out my group without closing out the rooms? Because if they are having any rooms that are still available, I should still be getting last minute pickup. So just be sure to look at all those traps. And again, you don't want to be suspicious, but that's kind of how things are going. People are, because things are slow, a lot of hotels are trying to maximize their revenue by putting these in. I've actually had a couple of my national sales people saying, I want to tell you about this so you didn't get upset when you saw it in the contract. Because I will see, when I've seen some of these, I've kind of, you will call the director of sales or the general manager in some cases saying, we negotiated this, and then you set this trap. And so just be aware of it. That does occur. You don't want to have that, but it all starts when you take a good RFP, you ask for what you want, you avoid the traps that the hotel will be setting. And actually, I could do a whole day on just this particular slide, but this is very good. Check this against your current RFP. Okay, but now we're moving on to COVID-19 because that's where we were. Okay, basically we know how to negotiate, we know what standard profit is, but now it's not the new normal. Right? If I hear that one more time, I'm going to choke somebody. It's not the new normal, it's just normal. It's what we've got. For the meetings, basically check the cleanliness. Okay, what I always say is, if you want to have a meeting at a hotel, I'll actually go in there and I want to inspect the hotel now if I'm looking to do a meeting up through the end of next year. And I've had I've done a lot of site inspections here in Orlando, and I want to check to see, is everyone masked? Is everybody in gloves? Is everybody correct? I arrive early. Actually, for my site inspections, I've actually arrived early and before I was supposed to get there and not called anybody. I just said I beat traffic. And I just kind of poke around just without the official tour so I can see that what's going on is all compliant, number one, because if I have a attendee who gets sideways with the hotel, he or she is going to notice that. I always say it's kind of Murphy's Law. The one attendee is going to have the biggest problem. He or she is the one who's going to have a problem. So I always walk the space. I want to make sure that doesn't happen. Make sure during the walkthrough, the in-person setup is correct. Check the guidelines, spacing, ventilation, masks, all that stuff. Make sure it's all there. Every hotel has got their statement of cleanliness going on. Hyatt has got the Cleveland Clinic. Marriott has got Mayo Clinic, wherever they got it going, and they're all put on by major health facilitators. So be sure to look at what they're doing. Make sure they want that you're covered. And the other basics: no shared microphones, pens, water pitchers, clickers, doors are open, multiple cleanings in the course of the day, all that stuff. That's normal now. So just make sure it all happens. You're all meeting planning, moving into COVID. So you got to make sure that you, the people on this call, are covered. Banquets, again, you want to make sure all the guidelines. There's no buffets. And actually, hotels doing plated service typically aren't allowed now. Right now anyway. They have concierge buffets, and that's kind of interesting, which I actually like your high school cafeteria, where you've got the sneeze guard in front of you, you point out what you want, and then the server will plate it and hand it to you. Actually put it on the counter, you pick it up, and it's a concierge buffet. And that's interesting how that's getting more and more popular, because it does pass the way. A lot of times you actually give it to another server and they'll do a delivery to your place setting. Rounds of 4 on a 6-foot table. It's basically north, south, east, west. And that's pretty much as good as you can do. 2 people at a 6-foot schoolroom, 1 on each end. Okay, and that way they're 6 feet apart. And even that, I did a couple groups this week. I had 20 groups this past week. We had 25 people for 2 in schoolroom, and each one got its own 6-footer. So that's how we did. We were able to get enough meeting space where it made sense. Consider doing separate rooms and TV monitors, doing a relay. Some of that stuff you're going to end up to be compliant, you're going to spend some money on it. But that's the way things are going. So the main thing is, if you're going to do meetings, make sure that you're as safe and covered as possible here. You don't want to get somebody sick to come to a meeting. And what happens is now a lot of people are looking at what's now booked. And they're looking at what's now, and they've got to actually renegotiate or cancel the COVID definite business because of COVID-19. I have probably booked, I know I've canceled at least 5 dozen, at least 60 groups, I bet I've canceled for all of this year and the first half of next year. And it's just been brutal in the hotel industry. It's not been great for me, but we know we're going to stay together. We're going to get through this. But a couple steps on this: when you're renegotiating definite COVID contracts, okay, a couple of things where that's coming in by, I would say by the end of this year through actually the first quarter of next year, if you should be pretty much looking at to see if you're going to be able to do it. Because as far as the vaccine and travel restrictions and all that, there's not a lot of good news out there. So you may want to take a look and see, is it time to start looking at your first quarter of next year? Can you do it? Can you renegotiate or move it to a future date? A couple things when you do that, I always request an addendum, not a full contract. You don't want to do a full contract because there's too many cooks in the kitchen. If you do a full contract, you got to get the sales manager, the sales director, the director of revenue management, the general manager, everybody. It's this whole full court press to get a new contract done. If you do an addendum, basically it's a one sheet of paper saying we're moving from this date to that date. Everything else is as outlined on the original contract. And if you can do that, I highly recommend that, because what happens is when you get into a contract, also a lot of the hotel managers doing their own contracts, it gets lost in translation. Some hotels want to renegotiate, but as much as you can for the people on this call, if you got to move it, go for an addendum. Number one, in addition to the force majeure, and most hotels now have a COVID clause. Ask them to put that in, or ask them to see what you can see, to send you a draft of that. A COVID clause there, I've seen different ones of these where they say that if it's a COVID in the United States or over these dates or some combination, and basically some of them are interesting. They have actually Hilton hotels and Hyatt hotels has got these 20% sliding scales. I would, unless it's a very generous number, I would typically avoid using them. I would go with the straight force majeure. If you cannot do the booking, if you cannot execute this booking, you should be off the hook if you cannot execute it due to COVID-19. There should not be a sliding scale or a penalty. The thing is, in hotel contracts or any contract, there's no such thing as penalties. It's only damages. Okay, and so a hotel, the damages are basically based on the profit margin of the rooms or the food and beverage. So you don't want to have any kind of penalties outlined in their COVID clause. Basically, it should be a force majeure clause that mentions and discusses COVID in general, so that you can get out if there's an occurrence or reoccurrence of COVID. Okay, and when you're doing, if you do get an addendum, or if they say, no, we have to do a full clean contract, make sure you recheck the dates, rates, and space. Make sure you check all the concessions. I have actually done probably a half dozen contracts where the hotel insisted on getting a new contract. And I said, okay, I'm going to try to be negotiable here. And what I did when I went through the contract, they went from a 1 per 40 to 1 per 50. Or they went from a 3-week cutoff to a 4-week cutoff. Or they went from the comp ballroom to a setup fee on the ballroom. And what they did, they just tried to nickel and dime this second contract. I said, no, all we're doing is changing the dates. All this other stuff was negotiated. And the interesting thing was, a lot of hotels said, well, that's what our current contract reads. And since this is a new contract, we have to change it. I said, no, I had to negotiate that several times. I bet easily half a dozen times. Just make sure that everything you have in the original contract is either protected under the addendum or outlined line by line perfect in the new contract. I said, avoid a full rewrite. The other thing is, just from an innocent standpoint, a lot of times I've had sales managers, a lot of them are laid off or on furlough or skeleton staff or whatever it might be, and they are typing their own contracts and they aren't good at it. And so a lot of times you'll see innocent human errors that are just a problem for you. So what you want to do is make sure that avoid it as much as you can. If they do say they need a new contract, as I said, make sure you're protected down to the dime. Just watch it very carefully. In either the addendum or the contract, make sure there's a release clause and circle that. That's really important, showing that the original dates of X and such are released without penalty. So whatever it is, whether it's an addendum or a contract, somewhere on that, make sure you've got that in there. Put a release clause in there. Otherwise, somebody else, another sales manager, can come back, after the first one moves on, they could come back saying, well, we never released the first set of dates. And they could hold you to some level of liability. So don't do that. Make sure you've got a release clause in there. Make sure any deposits are refunded, not credited. I don't want my clients holding money or having their money held by the hotel for any reason whatsoever. You should have it 100% refunded. And the thing is, with the force majeure clause, we'll talk about that in a second, but force majeure clauses means there's no penalty, there's no obligation on either part. Basically, it's an agreement to agree that you're going to walk away from the booking. So with that in mind, there should be no damages, penalties, credited of deposits or any of that. Everything is refunded back to exactly as it should be. Sign, and lastly, make sure you sign and collect the countersign agreement. Everybody's moving around a lot. There's been hirings and firings. Hilton got rid of 1,200 people. Hyatt got rid of 1,000 people. Disney just laid off 7,000 here in Orlando. And so it's not going to get good for a while, but with all these people moving around, make sure that you're getting it signed and countersigned. And I know a lot of people on the call will say, well, I'm doing all this double check, because I've got a lot of planners saying, well, I forgot this part, I forgot that part. So make sure that you're hitting all of these buttons to make sure if you do have to do renegotiate, and I'm sure we're not done with this, but when you do have to renegotiate, make sure this sort of thing is covered. But if you can book something now, you are money. There are hotels, they would love to hear from you. They would love to take care of you, and they're real lonesome. I had a booking, what I do, I actually, 2 weeks ago, I had 25 bookings for next week, and we put through 25 pharmaceutical industry bookings for, not days, 20 rooms for 2 nights, 40 room nights, 25 of them, and all over the country, and we were rock stars. Every hotel loved what we were doing. So what you want to do is, if you can, and I have to take the people on the call, is that if you can book 21, 22, or 2023, now I'm getting bids right now for a large group for 2023. I am getting rates I've never seen in my life from hotels here in Orlando. Very high-end, big deal convention hotels, and I'm getting bids just on the first bid, probably half of what I'm accustomed to seeing from these hotels. Everybody's very interested in getting things going again. So you don't want to be kind of cruel on it, but it's okay to kind of be assertive and kind of take advantage of the situation if you can do a booking. If you can do a booking, we'll talk about this, and we'll talk about this in a second, is that make sure you've got the COVID clause and the force majeure clause. But these are some of the items you should be negotiating if you can bring any new business in the COVID into the next couple of years. Book something new for 2023, you've got a ton of leverage. Like I said, for new contracts, courtesy blocks, that group we talked about a minute ago, the 25 groups of 20 people each, there was not a single attrition clause. Everything was 100% courtesy block, and that was with major companies. That was with Hilton, Hyatt, Marriott, Sheraton, all the big boys, and we got courtesy blocks from every one of them. Marriott does when they call it the letter of intent. And letter of intent, I don't care how they do it. Basically, we can release up to 30 days prior with no obligation. And with a corporate group is important because this particular one was a pharma group, and everyone's worried about traveling. And it was touch and go about whether or not everyone could make the meeting. Everybody made it. They were just getting so stir crazy and cooped up, stuck in their homes to try and do their work. They were thrilled to be out of the office. So get that courtesy block, or actually I have some groups that say either courtesy block or 50 to 70% attrition allowance. So, and that seems to be, hotels seem to be okay on that. A 30-day out cancellation clause, I talked about that, and most hotels have no problem with that. Waived F&B minimum, because realistically, we're going to be doing packaged food. We're not going to be doing the $100 plus dinners for a while. We're not going to do the $50 plus chicken lunches for a while. It's all going to be packaged food, pre-ordered, a lot of stuff where it's a different game. Make sure that if you're booking it, you're very, very conservative on what your spend's going to be, number one, and then just say there is no F&B minimum. These are the meals we want to have, but we can't assign a dollar figure because it's not going to be the surf and turf and big deal dinner. It's going to be a box, almost a Grubhub idea. So I've actually had a couple with that. Waive medium around 70% pickup. I've had a couple of hotels do that. Make sure that the social distancing is in your spacing. Make sure that you've got the right square footage. Get a diagram, meeting diagrams with the contract. I've got a lot of groups. Actually, I've got some for first quarter of next year where we actually got it with the diagram is included in the contract. So we have about almost 170 square feet per person. A standard is 100 square feet, as I said earlier, but with COVID, until things turn around, 150, 170 square feet, that's pretty much it. Having the service protocols in the contract, meeting room diagrams in the contract, and a strong force majeure clause. Look at the force majeure clause. What you'll see, if it's the old days, is basically this little 4-sentence, nothing, not really significant letter or addition that was some boilerplate clause. It really didn't mean anything. Now it means a lot. So we'll talk about that in a second. If you have a legal department, and I have several of these, if you have a legal department say that we need the following COVID clause or hold harmless clause or release clause or however you want it, if you have a clause you need to have a contract, you need to add to the contract, let us know. Because I can get with my general manager, I can get with my legal department if I need to. I bet I can make it happen. Or if I can't make it happen exactly the way you want it, I can get really close. So I'll get you a good clause that matches or really comes close to approaching what you need. Check for all the traps. And I can't say that enough. I've gotten probably 2 or 3 contracts in the last week where some of those traps I was telling you about have appeared. So make sure that those are covered, because there's a lot of hotels are trying to, I don't know if it's intentional, but I think they're saying that we're going to, since we're losing a lot of money, let's just kind of tighten up our contracts now. And so it should have been a lot easier. A lot of my rewrites have got some of those traps that I mentioned. And the hint number 1, as I said, get the contract drafts from the finalists before you actually go to press and you say, we're going to the Marriott or going to the Hyatt, whoever it is. Before you announce that, say that, well, I want to see the contract draft for my 2 finalists, and go through them with a fine-tooth comb and just make sure all the clauses and everything we've talked about appear, because once you sign it, like a friend of mine was the meeting planner for the FBI. He used to say that once he pulls his weapon, it's a medical problem. Okay, once you sign it, that's pretty much it. You really can't negotiate much after that. So make sure you've got the contracts spelled out, laid out exactly the way you want them. If they're not, then you got to go back and negotiate what you have a problem with. So that's all very important for new contracts. And then basically just make sure you negotiate everything correctly. There's a couple things, and this is a real good page. Also, I'm sure a lot of people on the call, they've already do some of this or a lot of this, but I always say, if you need something in particular, tell the hotel person, especially if you've got new business for the next couple of years. Everyone on this call is in the driver's seat. You've got a ton of leverage right now, so take advantage of it. Be sure to ask for the clauses you need. Hotel companies have a library of approved clauses. I happen to have the Hilton and Hyatt library here, so don't ask how I got them, but I do have them, and I can tell you if you ask for a construction clause, I know what you're going to get, or a attrition clause, or whatever it's going to be. They've got their approved clauses, and basically, I ask for these clauses. Most of the ones that I will ask for that the hotel will give me, they're pretty much what I had in mind anyway. So a lot of times I try to make the negotiating process as easy as possible. But there's a few of these things, and I'm sure just check this off. Like I said at the beginning, there's a lot of stuff that you're going to go through saying, I do all this stuff, but maybe I can tighten this up or fix that up by just a little bit. That's all you want to do. For future contracts, make sure you got a construction renovation clause, the waiver of service charge. If I have an outside audiovisual or whoever it is, I don't want to have to pay any kind of service charge. Mutual indemnification. Sometimes it says the client will indemnify the hotel, but it does not say the hotel will indemnify the client. So you want to make sure it's mutual indemnification and mutual insurance, that both parties have enough insurance. Lowest available rate over the event dates, I ask for that every time. Good, or 3 days pre and post, space available, ask for that. The group audit clause, as I said, I want to have my registration compared to their guest list, and make sure that everybody I've got is being credited towards my pickup. Change in management of the company or the brand, and again, if it was a Crown Plaza and it turns into a Holiday Inn, or as a Hyatt Regency turns into a Crown Plaza or Radisson or something, I have to have the ability to say that's good or that's not good. Okay, if I'm okay on it, that's fine. If I'm not, I should be able to cancel without any kind of attrition or any kind of penalty. A cancellation clause with a sliding scale. That's interesting. A lot of cancellation clauses say as soon as you sign this thing, you are 100% liable for anything you were to bring in, even if it's 2 and 3 years out. What I typically will ask for, if it's 2 or 3 years out, I'll have a cancellation clause with a sliding scale that maybe for the first 2 or 3 months after signature, there's no, or maybe there's just some token amount of a penalty or a cancellation fee. Number one. And then as we get closer in, we stair step it, that we get closer to the date. That's when the penalties will get higher and higher. Some of these I always like to make sure is I get a sliding scale. If you don't ask for it, you may not get it. Attrition, I always say, a lot of times in the attrition, they say it's 80% of sleeping rooms and 100% of the food and beverage, which I always kind of wondered about, because what I try to do is with my clients, I'll get 80% of the guest rooms, and typically I'll want 75 or 80%. Sometimes the hotel says we can do 85, so whatever. So I would say do 80 or maybe 85% actualization in rooms, then also get the same for food and beverage. A lot of times they'll say it's got to be 100% F&B. I never understood that. So I always try to get 80% of the F&B also. If you ask for it and you're assertive, a lot of times you'll get that. Resale and rebook clauses, we're going to talk about that in just a second, and the strong force majeure clause, not that chicken little clause they put in. So let's talk about the resale and rebook. There's two separate things, and these are very important. Everybody on this call, be sure to ask for both, especially now because we're canceling and day changing, canceling, moving things all over the place. What you want to do is a resell and rebook clause, okay? It's very important. They're two separate things. Negotiate and contract rooms and cater to 80%. Like I said, why is it that you give 80% sleeping rooms on a sliding scale, but it's 100% of the food and beverage? So ask for 80% on both, number one. Number two is contract a resell clause. You ask for a resell clause from Hyatt, Hilton, Sheraton, Marriott, Ritz-Carlton, Four Seasons, everybody, they will tell you that, I've got it right here, they've got a resell clause, and they've got it there, but you got to know to ask for it. If you don't ask, you won't get. So the hotel can resell the release space. So let's say if you do have to cancel, or you do go into attrition, or something for whatever reason, you're sideways with the hotel. If they're able to resell that space, you should not be liable, because again, there were no damages. If they were to resell the space at the same level of revenue or even better, then there should be no liability on any part, okay? That's number one for a resale clause. Also ask for a rebook clause, which is a whole separate thing. So that's in the event you do have to pay something. Let's say that you've, in front of God and everybody, that you're $1,000 or $10,000, whatever it might be, that you owe the hotel this. So what you can do though is have 100% of that fee applied to a future booking. Okay, and some hotels say that it's 50% or 30% or 75%. What I always like to do is say, I want the entire amount. I try not to get into a negotiation about a percentage, and I'll say, I want the entire amount there. And I would bet, boy, probably 3/4 of the time I'll get it. I'll bet I'll get 100% of it on the contract, and hopefully we can come up with a group, you know, within the next, say, 6 or 12 months, and I'll be able to get that entire amount credited towards that the new group. So do be sure to ask about that. And again, there's two separate things. Always ask for the resale and the rebook clause. And again, whenever possible, any attrition or damages are calculated on room's profit of 80%. What that means is that if I've got, say, a $10,000 piece of rooms business at 80% actualization, which is $8,000, I should actually be liable for 80% profit of the 8,000. So that's actually 6,400. And some hotels, you can ask for attrition, cancellation, resale, and rebook clauses to be calculated at anticipated profit. And if you can please take that down, if you ever use this, if you want to do that, I have hotels that they have put that in their contract. And I've worked with Westin hotels and Omni hotels and Hyatt and all these different ones. They can do it. You just have to know to ask. But now we got the biggie, force majeure. We've got just a few minutes left here. Force majeure is the biggie. That's a real biggie with any kind of cancellation in the COVID era. Most important thing is I'm not going to read this whole epic thing. This is a huge, huge force majeure clause, but there's certain things I had highlighted in it that are very important, okay? So we're just going to briefly go through it. The main thing is force majeure. It's a condition arises that prevents the program is outside the control of either party, okay? So basically, the way it works here, the performance required by either party, as I said, highlighted in this agreement, shall be excused and booking canceled at any time. So it means either party can cancel at any time. That's very important. There's none of this 3 month out, 6 months out window of opportunity, whatever it might be. Either party can cancel it a year out, 2 years out, 2 weeks out, whatever time it makes sense. You can do it, either party, at any time. In the event of extraordinary occurrences beyond the control of the party seeking to be excused, such as acts of God, war, actual, threatened, or suspected terrorist activity, government regulation, disease, World Health Organization, fire strikes, etc., or similar circumstances. Make sure that appears, or similar circumstances, because we don't know. I mean, COVID is one thing, but there's all sorts of other stuff out there. There's Ebola and all sorts of other stuff in the past. So make sure you've got or similar circumstances in there. Renders performance impossible, illegal, or economically impractical. Economically and practically, that's very important. If you can execute the meeting, but you're going to lose money, you could say it's economically impractical, we're not going to do it. And again, either party may terminate, suspend, or partially perform its obligations under this agreement without liability. And again, in the event the group decides to hold its meeting despite the circumstances, the hotel shall waive any and all fees, penalties, and other liabilities related to a reduced size meeting, and shall offer attendees any lower room rate offered to other guests during the in-house dates. That's so important also. I have a couple of groups that we are going to do the meeting. We are going to go live. And the nice thing is, if anything, they're looking forward to having us. I said, they want us, we want them. We said, we gotta get rid of this, these minimums and the attrition, because some of the meetings going to go, but some of these attendees aren't going to be able to attend. So I don't want to get stuck with some sort of liability because a lot of people are not allowed to travel. This is very important. Cancellation clauses and force majeure. Make sure when you look at your cancellation clause that it has those phrases in there. Invoking force majeure. Just because you say, I got to do force majeure, I got to cancel, that doesn't magically happen. It doesn't magically say that, yes, we're going to let you off the hook. What you have to do, and what this is, I actually got in touch, or I've been in touch with real attorneys. I'm not an attorney, so I cannot give legal advice, but I can say if you're going to do force majeure, what they asked was that you invoke force majeure, be very assertive, very specific on that. And typically you have to have 3 or 4 factual points to back up your claim. And in this case, this is an actual claim that I did for a group that I had. For the November 2020 ABC Corporation compel to invoke the contracted force majeure clause for the following reasons. COVID-19 has forced domestic travel on all of our user attendees. The attached federal and CDC travel policies are in effect. Okay, and basically, if you do need that, by the way, if you need those policies, send me a note. You know, my email's at the end of the program here, but I've got notes actually from the CDC and from the Office of Management Budget saying they're not allowed to travel for non-essential items. So if you do need that, let me know. But I have that in there. The next bullet point, user attendees are directors of municipal traffic systems around the country, essential director level engineers and managers. Federal regulations against domestic travel is mandated by government contractors and agencies. There is no date when these will be lifted. I've got these 2 memos saying you're not allowed to travel. Because they're not allowed to travel, the users can't come. That means my vendors can't come. So I really can't do the show at all. For these reasons, all brought about by COVID-19, ABC is forced to invoke the force majeure clause, basically because it's impossible to execute. So something like that, if you do still have to do something, I believe in being assertive, being strong. Don't be a chicken. Get out there and say, look, we've got to cancel. We want to come back, but we've got to cancel this now. And as I said here, be prepared to speak with the general manager, the director of sales, even Hyatt or hotel corporate. I thought so. I said Hyatt, but I have had to speak to several hotel corporate offices. If you can avoid the cancellation, that's preferred, but always negotiate from a strong position. Do not be as I said, don't be a chicken. It takes some doing. And this is interesting. There's phony force majeure clauses out there. This was one, I had actually seen this a couple months ago now, and I'm seeing 2 and 3 of them now. They don't call it force majeure, they call it impossibility. If you are signing a new contract or if you've got an old contract, do not sign this. This is not good. The impossibility, in the event that a party's obligation of this agreement is rendered impossible or illegal by a force beyond that party's reasonable control, that party should not be liable for such delay or inability to perform. And such performance, where it's bold and highlighted here, shall not be excused, but shall be reasonably delayed until such a time as the impossibility is removed, in the event the parties agree to work together in good faith to reschedule the event at a mutually agreeable time. So basically, they're just kicking the can down the road. Okay, if it's a force majeure, you want out of it, you want to be free of it. Realistically, the hotel wants to be free of it, also the hotel sales manager, but the hotel legal department say, no, let's hold on to it. We may be able to turn this into a booking. So if you can, again, the people on this call, see if you can get out of this. Do not sign this contract. If, however, a force beyond the party's reasonable control, kind of read through that, the rest of us, You basically are given a 2-year window in this particular event here. They've given a 24 months from the dates of the performance set forth. Said performance shall be excused, except for impossibilities provided herein, the doctrines of force majeure, supervening frustration, all these others. Legal theories or defenses are expressly waived and have no application to this agreement, its performance or non-performance. If you see this, again, it's a phony force majeure. Basically, you're agreeing that if you need to cancel, that you've got to move it in a 2-year window. If they happen to have the dates and you happen to be okay to do it, then you have to renegotiate the whole thing. Force majeure is force majeure. If you cannot do it, especially due to COVID, no one knows what's going to happen 2 years from now. So I would say get out of it. Do not sign this contract. If you have a force majeure clause like the one we just talked about, I would say use that one or use something that you've got that has some of the elements of the one we just discussed. But do be sure this is not, I saw this and this is it's amazing that this is a major hotel in Las Vegas has this. But I would not sign this document for anything. This waives force majeure. Check your signed contracts, okay? If you have a signed contract that has something like in it, you may want to do an addendum, okay? Force majeure means no obligation. All deposits and prepayments are refunded. So that's very important. Again, hint number 1 that I said earlier, I'm going to say it again. Hint number 2, ask for a draft copy from your 2 or 3 finalist hotels. Make sure they send you that final, and you want to see, I want to see what does the force majeure look like. Okay, but it's not all problems. Some of these things you can still contract, you can still do a good deal. Hotel sales managers, like I said, we train our guys really hard. I was a great trainer, I was a great sales director. I probably pushed them a little bit harder than I really should have, but I was in hotels that typically weren't doing well. I had to fix it. So basically my guys are very well trained, and most of them are. So make sure that if you can, maximize what you're going to give them so they can go in and get a best deal from me, the director of sales. Be flexible, your space, dates, and rates. If you can be flexible, I can be your pal forever. If that book you want, if the dates you want are not available, if you go the week before, week after, and you can be flexible, I can probably get you a better deal. Shop several hotels, as I said, and tell the sales managers they're being shopped, because every Hyatt guy knows the Marriott guy, the Hilton guy, and we compete with each other all the time. It's friendly competition most of the time, but we do like to beat them. Tell the hotels your decision date. If you say that you're looking to make a decision by July of next year, it doesn't really do much for me. If you say you're going to sign it by the end of next month, okay, now we can talk. That makes a lot of sense. A more immediate decision will help you out. Negotiate, meet the GM and sales director. A lot of times when you're doing the site inspection, meet these people. A lot of times the salesperson you're working with, he or she's going to get promoted or transferred or whatever, and they're not going to be there when you come back. So if you meet the GM and sales director, you're probably going to be there when you come. So you'll be able to see, they'll be able to take care of you, number 1. And then also if you hit a bump along the negotiating trail, they can actually help you with that. Negotiate in person if you can do that, and especially with everything going on. Travel is an issue for now, but when things loosen up again, if you can get on a plane and go talk to these people in person, you will get a much better deal than you will on email and phone calls. I don't care, even Zoom calls or whatever. Negotiate a month and a quarter end, because being a sales guy, we are evaluated every month by our booking pace. What do we put on the books this month for all future months? And we actually know exactly what we should be hitting, and we know what we have hit compared to what we should be. And so if I can get a month-end booking, I'm a rock star. If it's for Hyatt is quarterly, for Hilton it's biannual, it's June and January, is that if you can get towards the end of those 3-month or 6 months or monthly periods and you're okay to sign that piece of paper, leverage that for a good negotiation. Say, look, if you can give me an extra suite or come down $10 on the rate or whatever, I can get this signed by the end of the month. And if you can do that, hotels they're more than likely, they'll take care of you because they want to get that signed. Have the agreement draft emailed to you and Word document with changes tracked. I don't like going back and forth, but scribbling back and forth. I like to do the changes tracked. Most hotels, most professionals like doing it that way now anyway. But just a kind of a reminder, if you've not tried it, it does work very well. And be a professional. Like I said, as I mentioned a couple times, it is okay to be assertive. It's okay to push. It's okay to campaign on your behalf, to impart value to your job and to your organization. It's okay to push. Because if you are, again, as a hotel guy, I'm going to respect you because I am being paid and everything to be professional, to be assertive on behalf of my hotel. And again, if there's anything I can do for you in the course of negotiations or contracting or COVID, like I said, give me a call. I'd be happy to work with you if there's anything I can do. And again, we covered a lot of material. I hope you're able to read through it and see that you've got some, and see which, if you'd like to add some, or if that helps you out quite a bit. And that's really about it. Do we have some questions?
Hey there, Tom. This has been absolutely wonderful. We've got a very busy chat going, and I do have quite a few questions. So I just want to, I don't know if we'll get through all of them. I'm on page 3 now.
Wow.
But
Okay.
we certainly just
Either did a really good job or a really bad job.
right, right. So for everyone on the call, if any of you need to drop off, we are still recording, and we'll continue to until we are done. So,
and I do apologize for the little technical glitch at the beginning there.
that's okay.
Kind of
It happens to the best of us. So, but we will have this recording in full until we are done here. So you all will be getting that. I know a couple people joined late and were asking about that. And so what I will try to do here, Tom, if you are good for a bit longer here, we will try to answer some of the questions here. And just for everyone on the call, for some reason we don't get to your question, these are going to be shared with Tom, and you have his information here. Of course, you're welcome to reach out to Tom and get some more information. So these are really just in order as they came in. So and for no other purpose, that's exactly how I'm going to go through the list here. The first question we had was, is GAAP for North America hotels only?
No, it's the International Association of CPAs, AICPA, came up with the gaps. And so what they do is it's for all, it's all international, domestic and international hotels. There's some variance between, say, union and non-union hotels, but typically, I mean, give or take a couple percentage points, they're very uniform.
Great. Okay. This, when referring to profit, were you referring to net or gross?
That would be the net profit. What happens is that on page 1 of the P&L, we've got food sales, and then we've got food expense, and then food profit. We have room sales, take out food, rooms expense, and we got rooms profit. Everything goes down to the bottom line. A hotel, if it makes 34% profit for that hotel, that's good. Then below that, then you've got the mortgage on the hotel, the insurance on the hotel, the taxes on the hotel management company, whether it's Hyatt or Hilton or whomever. We are most concerned with what is our GOP, our gross operating profit for that, because that's the last part we can touch. After that, it's up to the owner. What kind of mortgage does he have? What kind of insurance do they carry? That sort of thing. But our GOP is typically about 30 to 34% in a hotel. So we should keep about 30, 34 cents on the dollar when it's all said and done. I was in one hotel where we had a very large room sales, but minimal food and beverage. So we had over 50% profit. So our GOP was 50%, typically 30, 35. Typically hotels make money when we hit about 65% occupancy.
Right. Okay. Next question. When there is a need for meeting space plus food and beverage, but no or few sleeping rooms, and I know I've been into this with several of my clients over the years, what recommendations do you have to assist with negotiations? I could have used the answer to this 10 years ago.
Okay, yeah, there's a couple of things. Actually, first of all, a lot of hotels, once we get to say 3 months out, 6 months out, or I was in a couple of big hotels where we did like 9 months out, we have a catering free sell. Because if you've got all this meeting space, but minimal guest rooms, it's basically a piece of catering business. So the main thing is a couple things: be flexible with your dates. If you want to do a wedding, for example, typically they're space heavy with a minimal number of rooms. So if you want to do a wedding, we love weddings, but we have to make sure it fits well on whatever else we have on the books. So if you come in and say, I have to have that weekend, we may or may not have that weekend, but I might have the week before or week after. So be flexible, number one. If it's a meeting, what I like to do, if it's a meeting, a space heavy meeting, go to the CVB calendar, the Convention and Visitor Bureau calendar. And if you can, see what they've got for citywide conventions. If you have a citywide convention, that means a lot of their guest rooms are taken, but all the events are at the Convention Bureau or at Convention Center. So the hotel has got meeting space to give. So if you can be
Right.
flexible with your dates and go over a citywide group, that can help you out a lot. Okay.
Great.
And then the last thing is, if you can book short term, typically when my various hotels, we would have a catering free sale easily within 3 months, a lot of times within 6 months. Because if I knew I was already sold out with either a citywide or in-house pieces of business, but I still had meeting space to give, I would give that to the catering department. Okay, just because I want them to hit their numbers also. Okay.
Great. This was specific. Where did you come up with $125 per room for F&B? This specific person, we are going out closer to 275.
Wow. I love you already. No, the 125 plus, it works about 160. The person who has that, that's great. You very high end. What that is kind of a mix of, let's say, corporate groups and kind of mid-level to, let's say, basic level to mid-level to high-end corporate meetings. And that's sort of in that range. Maybe 100 and a quarter, 100 and maybe 140, 150 is typically what hotels work from. If you are going to the Ritz-Carlton in Hawaii and the Four Seasons in Nevis, yes, you're going to spend a lot more than that. But for a normal, say, corporate meeting, let's say you could go a little higher, maybe 140, 150 plus. But a lot of times you have to negotiate. I negotiate all that catering. So, but if you're in that price point, you're probably some very nice hotels.
Okay. What's a fair number of concessions to request? Is it based on meeting portfolio, size of group?
I ask for a lot. That list you saw was a large list. That would be actually, if you saw that list, that would be a list for, let's say, I have 200, 250 rooms per night for 2 and 3 nights. It could be, say, 750 to 1,000 room nights. That big list is what I'll typically ask for, something in that range. Obviously, if it's 10 rooms and a coffee break, I might ask for just an upgrade for the boss. If it's 50 rooms for 4 nights and I need, 3 staff speaker or speaker rooms, that sort of thing. So I kind of customize it. But that large list you saw on my list of concessions, that's, I'd say, and I've actually pulled that from one of my bookings that was around 250 per night for 3 nights.
Okay. I don't know if this.
I asked for more than I can reasonably get because I know I got to give up some. So somewhere between what I'm asking for and what they're going to give me, I'll find reality. Exactly.
Yeah, you can always ask for more. They can, take a couple out and you're still in good business there.
I grew up in a big family.
If these 2 questions came in from the same person, but they're very similar. So when we are bringing in outside AV, is the wording you could use to say we will not pay the fee, or do you just draw a line through that part? And then the question right after that was, what do you say to hotels who insist on load in and load out fee to have their in-house AV watch our outside AV company to protect the hotel? So I was thinking
that would be the sort of thing I'd want to talk about that during the site inspection. And I would want to have that in the RFP. And then I also put, when I do my RFP, basically what I'll do is I'll have my RFP will have basically that whole list of things that you saw. And I'll say, this is what we need, is that this group is very specific on the requirements. So special priority will be given to hotels who can accommodate this. So I'll say, here's my RFP. Ideally, I'll negotiate everything there during the RFP stage. And then we take the finished RFP bullet points and move them right onto the contract and put them exactly the way they are, saying that we will not pay a corkage fee for audiovisual or, load in, load out, that sort of thing. If I agree to some sort of labor charge, and some of my groups are pretty big, so there is going to be a labor charge of some sort, but I want to be able to have that in the RFP and on the contract before the group arrives.
Right. Very smart.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
And that's one of those things, again, where you get 2 and 3 hotels competing, and you could say, look, the Hilton guy, you're $20 higher, $50 higher, or whatever, you're doing a fee where I'm getting a comp at the Marriott. So if you can meet what your Marriott's doing, that puts you in contention. Otherwise, I had one group, if you looked at what this particular hotel wanted to charge, it was like $2,600 load-in fee for 1 pallet. It was just crazy. And
Yeah.
so knowing in advance that I'm going to ship several pallets of stuff, I needed, again, the first 500 was free. And then after that, I had a reasonable amount after that. But I knew what I had shipped in the past, so I knew I was going to ship for that particular event.
Do you think that, just a follow-up to that, do you think negotiations are going to be a bit easier in light of what we're dealing with in 2020 based on
Oh,
how?
yeah. Yeah, like I said, you know, coming up, if you have anything booking for 21, 22, 23, again, you want to be assertive and professional, but do take advantage. I mean, hotels, they would love, I've gotten thank you notes for that little 20
Right,
room group. I mean, I could go get a comp room the rest of my life at any of those hotels because they were
exactly.
just thrilled to have business. You know, they've had the roughest year in the history of the industry.
Yeah,
And so and they just want to get back in the game.
exactly. Okay, do sales managers have a guide from the hotel or corporate with approved clauses they can use in a group contract? Does that document have a
Oh, yeah.
name?
Yes, yeah, and typically, like I said, that most of the hotel corporations have a library of clauses that they are allowed to use. Okay, so on that one slide where I was talking about the clauses to ask for, if you ask for any of those clauses in your contract, a lot of them will be there automatically, but if you want to add any of those, I just ask for, give me the resale clause and the rebook clause and the construction clause and the mutual indemnification, whatever I had there, and I'll ask for all the hotel's version of all of those. If the people on this call, I have an insurance client and they're very specific, their legal department is very specific. So I have them send me the clauses they want, and then I'll have the hotel look at those and approve them.
Right. Okay, let's see. I had a couple of folks that asked this question, and it was about some wording for
Okay.
really impractical. They were curious if it should be impracticable versus impractical. They were asking about the wording on that.
That's actually, I gotten it from a client, and economically impractical is what I was given. I think that the tense or I don't know if it's grammatically correct, but legally, I'm told that is a good thing to ask for. And I definitely would ask for it just because, you know, there's like unpracticable or impractical. I think having that as open as it can be, I think that's actually better.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
That I just had a couple of questions at kind of at the end. Let's see. Is it usual to request a contract draft when a decision has not been made with the hotel? I've never.
No,
Has
I
anyone
tell
else
clients
done
that
that?
all the time. I actually tell the hotel that's okay. Got the Hyatt and the Marriott people. I said, okay, it's you two. We've gone from every city down to your city, from 5 hotels down to you two. Okay. Now what I need is I need you two to draft me up a hotel contract for this group. And I want to make sure all the clauses are correct and dates are correct and everything is correct. If there's anything interesting, because actually what I do is I kind of blame my client. I say my client is very specific.
Right.
In fact, I'm very specific, but I'll say my client is very specific. So with that in mind, I want to make sure that I can make sure my client is happy. So what I'm asking is, and hotels, they do that all the time. It's
Good.
a little unusual, but if it were for, say, again, 20 rooms and a coffee break, I wouldn't do it. But if it's for a substantial piece of business, you know, 2 and 3 and 4 days, 200, 300 rooms a day, you know, a good sized piece of business, I think you're well in your rights to ask one.
Right. Yeah, and I think, you know, you're acting on behalf of your client's best interest anyway. So, you know.
Yep. And you say that again, you're not a client if it's for your own employer. You say my
Exactly.
boss is really tough, or my boss
Exactly.
is a contract fiend. He loves reading contracts. So I'll kind of put it on him or her, saying that the boss needs that. And so I always tell the client or the hotel person, if we can make this happen, I look like a rock star in front of my boss.
Right.
Okay.
All right. Actually, this question you had already addressed it. It came and then you addressed it. So let me see what we have down here. This person said, we have asked for cancellation profit to be calculated minus taxes. Issue. It sounds like they were able to do it without
Yep.
issue.
Yeah. Yep, you should be able to do that. And, you know, if you do the full, at some point you want to hear my full negotiation seminar, the whole 2-day epic. But yeah, what I try to do is I try to negotiate it based on 80% of rooms, 80% of food and beverage, and then calculate it based on the percentage of profit, 80% for rooms and 40% for catered F&B. And you'll see your liability is reduced dramatically. And legally, that's how it's calculated. There are no penalties in the contract, just damages. So if the hotel collects a cancellation fee based on retail, they're actually ahead because they get all this retail revenue without any kind of expense. So if they collect 100,000 at the top line, they get to put 100,000 on their bottom line, 100% profit. Okay, so.
Right.
It's good to know, and hotels do that. You can ask hotels, the major chains do have that saying attrition and cancellation to be calculated at anticipated profit.
Okay. How do you feel, Tom, about using an associations contract instead of the hotels?
I've actually had a number of clients do that. I have a number of clients, and basically what they'll do is I'll have their contract for pages 2 through 5, and typically the hotel contract will just have the front page, will have the day-by-day block, the day-by-day rates, and maybe bullet point concessions. If the hotel is okay on that, I'm fine with that. Actually, I have a couple of the well, Amway, Mary Kay, Tupperware, Pampered Chef, a lot of those network marketing companies, that's how they do it.
Great. So we do have, just so you know, we had almost, I think at the highest today, I saw around 270 participants. We still have 160 in the room, which is great. We have folks from all over the globe. And so I had a specific question. We have some folks, and I don't know if they're still on the line, that were joining us from India.
Cool.
And so they were asking, wait, I lost my question here. Oh, would all of this apply to hotels across the globe, India included? Also, where does the maximum profitability come from? That's all one question.
A couple of these, it would generally, what you saw for the numbers, generally applies pretty much across internationally. It's all pretty much that way. You know, union versus non-union hotels. Some places have minimum wage. So Florida's got a very low minimum wage, where New York City's got a high minimum wage. So the percentages will be different, but I mean, it's still basically that same neighborhood of profitability to get to the GOP. The GOP is what the hotel controls. And as I said, after that, then the owner has to pay for the mortgage on the hotel. I mean, my little 300-room hotel, we had about a $400,000 a month mortgage. So that was just the mortgage. And then the hotel, you know, insurance on that. And then the EP, you know, there's a whole number of accounting after that. Most hotel owners, if they can make any money, they're thrilled. If they can cover the mortgage note, they're thrilled. The thing is, hotels don't make a lot of money by themselves, even though we have all these huge sales at the top. When it's all said and done, the profit margins may be 3 or 4%, okay? But you're on the most expensive real estate on earth. You're on the Del Coronado, you're in downtown New York, you're on the Miracle Mile in Chicago, you're next to Walt Disney World here in Orlando. So it's basically, it's an appreciating asset. But yes, typically the P&L, the way I discussed it, is pretty much uniform throughout.
Okay. This next question, what kind of proof should they provide to show, I guess meaning the hotels or properties, to show release space rooms, quote, not resold, and therefore we're still liable for? What should you expect to get from them?
Oh, okay. Actually, what I do when I've had that situation is that I'd want to see, and again, what I do is they'll say that we owe them a certain amount of money for cancellation. And I say, great. So what I'll need will be your day-by-day flash report. And the way hotels work is that we got the annual forecast, the quarterly forecast, the monthly forecast, and then the flash report. The flash report is the day-by-day report that we, the hotel, send to our corporate office, where it compares what did we do that night versus what did we forecast we're going to do that night. And you have to ask very specifically for the flash report. Don't, you know, that's what we hotel guys call it. The daily revenue report, I know Ritz-Carlton, I think, calls it that. But everybody else calls it a flash report. And what I do is I've had hotels say, well, we can't show you that. And I'll say, well, I can't really ask my client to write you a check for damages without something to back it up. And I know the flash report is the only official document where it goes from the hotel to their corporate office to actually say what did they do versus what did they forecast they were going to do. Because if they weren't able to show there was a loss in revenue, they have no case. There are no penalties, it's only damages. So if they made the same revenue as they would have made, there's no case. A first-year law student could boot that.
Gotcha. Okay.
You now know more than you're supposed to know about hotels.
Are there any rules from the hotels giving a deadline for a client to sign the contract for corporate group guaranteeing 200 rooms over 320 room nights?
And say that again, please.
It says, are there any rules from the hotel giving a deadline for the client to sign the contract for corporate group guaranteeing 200 rooms over 320 room nights?
Now, typically what we hotel guys will do is that we'll hold tentatives, and ideally we'll stack several tentatives over future dates. And ideally we kind of look out for each other in the hotel sales office, where if we find out this one's going to go definite and I've got a second option on those dates, so I'll call my client, see if I can move them to another set of dates. Or if, let's say a group that is, we've got two groups that are fighting for the same set of dates, and one group says, well, we decide to cancel. So they're out from a tentative to cancel. My second option group can take those. Typically, it's pretty fluid. What some hotels will say is that they can't book something like 200 rooms more than 2 years out, or because of a citywide, or there's some in-house rule, but there's no official rules like a corporate-wide edict on how to book things. Typically, you do that on the hotel level.
Okay. We have, definitely some other questions. I wanted to kind of end with one here. And we just, for anyone that we didn't get to your question, remember, we are sending these to Tom. You have his contact information here. We absolutely suggest that you reach out. But the last one here, I do have some folks that are asking if you have any sample RFPs or hotel contracts that are globally applicable and acceptable that you'd be willing to share templates.
Yeah, go ahead and send me your email address. My email's here on the back page, the last page here. Yeah, go ahead and send it. I've got a couple that I use. Actually, it's a sample contract that I actually use when I do my full presentation. And you can see that in my sample RFP.
Great. Well, this has been absolutely amazing. I can tell that just because we still have 150 people listening in and sharing
Isn't that great?
and thoughts, and a lot of feedback on here, Tom, which we will send to you, which is all really wonderful, and a lot of thanks. And this is gold comment. So I think this has been absolutely wonderful. And just for everyone on the line, you will be getting the recording, as I mentioned, within 48 hours with that. And Tom, I was hoping that we could also share the slide deck in addition to the actual recording, since we started off with some technical.
Oh, sure. Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'd say, definitely send the slide deck out to everybody, just because we do cover, again, I try to make sure everyone gets their money's worth, so that you've got lots to read. And so check to see, again, what you're seeing in the slide deck versus what you're currently doing now for your RFP and your contracts. And you're going to see some of your stuff you're already doing fine. And then some you're going to say that you want to tighten that up or fix that or do that a little bit better. Sure.
Perfect. I'm going to answer one question live, just because I know it's important to a lot of folks here, about your CE credit. That will come in your email. You'll have information, including Tom's information, and as well as how to get your CE credits too. So I know that many of you may have those questions as well. I also dropped a link in here because on Thursday of this week, we are so very lucky to, and I'm going to drop it in here one more time, to have Tom join us again on Thursday to talk about how to increase virtual event sponsorship revenue. So, if you're on the line and you're not someone that's your bucket, feel free to pass it along to your colleagues or anyone else, but you will be getting a promo for that as well. So again, more wonderful information coming on that on Thursday. But Tom, this has been, I'll steal from one of our attendees here. This has been absolute gold.
Okay.
Very helpful for me as well as a meeting planner in the field, and for us on this side. And we appreciate everybody that was here today. As I looked at it, we had over 450 registrants and at least more than half of that attending. So this has been absolutely amazing, and we really appreciate it.
And again, I appreciate everybody coming. And one of the things I do is that I'll send you the deck. And if you need any of the RFP and the contract, I'll send you that as well. But if you need anything, again, where I end up with a call me if I can help, give me a call or drop me a note. There's no obligation, there's no fee, there's anything I could do to help, let me know. And maybe at some point, if we end up doing business, that'd be great. But again, if there's anything I could do, there's no strings attached. This is not a pitch, okay? But thanks for coming again and have a great day.
And Tom, we will see you back here on Thursday.
You got it, be here.
So thank you so much, and everybody have a great afternoon.
Very good, thanks everyone, bye-bye.
Thank you.